Good morning, and thank you for attending the ISM Lunch and Learn series. Today we're going to be looking at business insights with our specialist, Mr. Bruce Kern. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. All phones will be muted to prevent background noise during the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will open the phones for any questions. If you have some questions that should come up, please feel free to use the chat window to ask them, and we will address those at the end of the meeting as well. Thank you, and Bruce, thank you. I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Okay, thanks, Sherry, for the nice introduction. Without any further ado, we'll get started. So, as Sherry mentioned, we are going to be covering some of the features in Business Insights today. So, Business Insights is a module here on your Sage menu. So, we're looking at Sage 100 2018, the latest and greatest. So, this for those of you who may not have seen the new standard desktop, this will hopefully be a time to take a look at that as well. But if we go into the Business Insights here, if we go into the Business Insights, oops, hold on one second. We'll see that we basically have three components here. So we have what's called the Business Insights dashboard. There's some things to do to set that up and whatnot, and you can use the display dashboard option here, or there's a little shortcut button right on the ribbon. So we're just going to pop that open real quick and show it to you. Not going to spend a lot of time on this, but these are pre-configured analytics that you can add, and they're based on the user. So you can specify from the predefined analytics that are available who gets what type of information. So it's not an all or nothing kind of a thing. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the Business Insights dashboard, but it is part of the Business Insights module, so we like to mention it as part of our webinar today. Another component that you have in the Business Insights, if you didn't know about it, is called the Reporter. So Business Insights Reporter. What this is, by way of introduction, this is a front end to the Crystal reports. So many of you who use Sage know that all the reports in Sage, if you're on a newer version, are all Crystal-based reports. But sometimes people want to build their own reports as well, custom reports from scratch. The difficulty in that is you have to know quite a bit about databases and linking tables, etc., sort of non-accounting type of a knowledge, not always intuitive for us bean counter types. So this is a front-end wizard which has pre-linked tables that they call views that allows you to simply kind of pick and choose from things through a wizard to produce your report. Doesn't require nearly the level of technical expertise that writing reports from scratch does. Here I have just a sample report that I wrote to run real quickly just to kind of show you an example of a possible report that you could do. This is called my customer drop-off report. Has many of the same features as far as the standard reports go in Sage, that you can save it, export it to Excel, all that sort of thing. So we'll see if we can get this thing to generate for us. And of course oh, there it goes. It was running in the background. So here's an example of it. You can see I've added a few columns of data, kind of focusing on, maybe if a customer had some activity that wasn't real recent, but had been established, at some point in the past, maybe that's a customer we want to follow up on. That's really all I'm going to show you for the Business Insights Reporter. Oh, and there it goes again. I guess I got trigger happy and clicked it a bunch of times. Nothing like a live TV. Okay, so that's it for the those two pieces of the Business Insights. Really, the rest of this webinar is going to be focused on what's called the Business Insights Explorer. So here under the Business Insights Explorer menu, there are a number of available Business Insights views. So this is an entire all-inclusive list for everything that's in the entire Sage 100 instance that we're looking at. If we shrink that up, and we go and look under a particular module, let's say we look at accounts payable, hypothetically, we'll notice that every module in Sage now, or almost every module, also has its own Explorer menu. And under that Explorer menu, you'll only see the views, the BIE views, relative to that module. So it's a much more pared down list. So if you know exactly what you're looking for and you want to go right to that modules list, you'll have a shorter list to look through. If you're kind of just want to see everything, you can go to the Business Insights Explorer, and we'll be able to see everything under that one menu. Okay, so having said that, we're going to be, doing some customizing some Business Insights Explorer views today, and we're going to loosely, and I use the term loosely, very loose, we're going to loosely refer to a collection scenario in some of our examples. So just by way of kind of showing you, and hopefully at the end we can tie it all together, just wanted to show you a couple little customizations that we will be dealing with a little bit in our webinar today. So here's just a kind of a preview of a customer in Sage, and what we've done here is we've added a collections tab with the custom office module, and we've added a handful of fields here that we want to use for tracking collections activity, such as caller ID, status, dates, and some notes. All right, now jumping into actual business insights now. So we're going to just start with the customer view and kind of just talk about the screen a little bit in general. So just like Crystal, Business Insights has a set of standard views, just like there are report settings called standard for the forms and the reports, and then you can kind of make your own. We'll be doing that throughout today. So not going to spend a lot of time talking about the basic interface. Most of you are smart enough to probably figure that out. But we have some toolbars up at the top to do various things depending on what we want to do. This is considered the primary grid. They call this the preview pane, the pane down below. And so we're just going to kind of work with this. One of the things that we can do is we can turn this navigation pane off if we aren't going to use it. So if I do view and I just want to uncheck that, navigation pane goes away. So a lot of the things you want to do in BIE can use the navigation pane, but a lot of times you're customizing a view for something, you don't necessarily need the navigation pane. So if we get time at the end, I'll show you where that navigation pane can add some real power after we get done customizing some things. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and change the view to a different view. And we're going to just try this customer open invoices view. And we'll just talk about some basic things kind of to start with, and we'll work our way into a few more trickier or more advanced features as we go. So just covering some basics at the beginning, one of the things that's common is, how do we remove something off of this screen that we don't want? So I'm going to cover that and moving. So let's say, for example, here's this terms code. Let's say I wanted to move that into a different position on this kind of column. All I really have to do is click with my mouse, hold my left mouse button, and I can just drag that anywhere I want. And you can see right now, if I let go, there's some green arrows kind of saying, hey, if you let go, this is where it's going to put it. So very easy to move it back and forth on your grid. If you want to get rid of something, it's also extremely easy. Really the easiest thing to do. There's more than one way to do any of this stuff. What I like to do is just highlight it with my mouse, click it, and drag it off the screen in any direction that you nilly-willy like. So I'm going to drag it off, off to the left, and away it goes. All right, let's see here. So the comment, let's say we didn't want this comment over here. Another way that you could remove a field is you could do edit, column settings, and you could remove the checkbox on the word comment, just like that. Another way that you can access the column settings is just to right-click on any of these header fields and go straight to the column settings, and you get that same screen there. So if I uncheck the comment there, it's the same place. That's another way of moving it. Personally, I like to just drag it off. It's really easy. All right, so ways of adding data. Same thing. You can use the edit menu. The column settings is the where you want to go. So you can go into your column settings, and if you want to add something like, I don't know, the date of last payment, you can look for it in this list, okay? And if you don't see it, which I don't see the date of last payment, then you're going to try to add it, okay? So the first thing we're going to try to add is using this add button. So if I click the add button, what I see is 3 different tables in Sage. So for those of you who are familiar with Crystal Reports, you might say, oh, the first question I'm going to have is, can I add my own tables and link them to this view? The answer is no, you cannot. These tables are pre-linked by the code that Sage develops, and you cannot add to them or change your links. So it's kind of use what they have available here, and if you can't, you're kind of stuck with it. All right, so in this case, we're going to be looking for the date of last payment, and I think that one's under this customer table. So if we expand that out, we get a list of all of the tables that are in our customer database. So we're going to look for the date of last payment in here. There it is, date of last payment. I can highlight it, click OK. It brings it over to my list. It's got it checked. And then something else that we'll be playing with today is the formatting. This is one of the coolest parts about the Business Insights Explorer. So that happens to be a date field because it's a date of last payment. I can optionally format that as a date field, and that may or may not do something for me, and it certainly will do something for me later on. But just pointing out there are some formatting things here that you can do. That one's probably going to be fine even if I didn't format it as a date, but that's our first foray into the date format. Okay, now we're going to add another one here, which is the average days overdue. So right here, we're going to kind of do this one how I like to do it. I like to just right-click the column, go straight to the column settings, and we're going to look for the average days overdue. I think I spotted that in the AR customer a moment ago. So I'm going to go straight to the AR customer, and I'm going to look for that average days overdue. And there it is. There's the average days overdue. Okay. Now, this, if I just say accept here, it's fine. You know, it's a whole number. Something I could do with decimals, we'll see later, is that we'll be able to use the format mask to actually take out the decimals. All right, now for this next one here, we're going to just show you how you can add a custom field. So at the beginning of the class, we kind of showed that there was a customer screen that had a custom tab added with the custom office module, and we'd added 4 or 5 fields there to help us track some collection activity. So one of the common questions is, is it possible to bring that customization, those fields, into a Business Insights Explorer screen? And the answer is yes, you can. So if I go to the column settings, that was the AR customer table. So even though I can't add different databases, the Business Insights Explorer is smart enough to use the user-defined fields that you custom create. So here's the AR customer. Just like in Crystal, if you ever write Crystal reports, all the customized fields are at the bottom. So UDF stands for user-defined field. That's kind of a signal that this is a custom field that we've created and not one of these other ones up above that are kind of stock Sage. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add the collection notes. So here's a field called collection notes. We're going to add that there. And one of the other things you might want to do from time to time, especially if you're working with custom fields, but really for any field, is you can update the caption here so that it makes more sense. So in this case, I'm just going to call it collection note, just like that. Okay, there we are. All right, and then there's our collection note. Depending on how much space I need, I may or may not want to make that little wider. All right, we're going to add the current balance next. All right, so if I come over here, this is going to be, go to our column settings, and we're just going to add, go to AR customer, and we're going to look for the current balance. So by now, hopefully you're getting the feel for it, that it's not too difficult to locate the fields and just drag them out onto the field here. Okay, so there's my current balance along with some aging information. I'm just going to highlight that. And for this one, we're going to do something a little different. So this is a numeric dollar field. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this format field here, and we're going to mark this as currency format. Then we're going to use the column level formatter, which opens up this, in this case, the currency box because it's a currency field. So what you open is relative to the format that you select there. And we can do something kind of fun here. We can do some color coding. So right here we have a format mask, and it's basically saying, here's a format mask for a positive number. Here's how I want you to show a negative number, so brackets. And here's how I want you to show a 0. And I can color code data based on these formats. So hypothetically, if I wanted to make that current balance green, I could right click in that cell, insert the color tag, make it green, and I can see that it's inserted the word green here now. And if I hit OK, now I have that current balance showing in green over here. So this probably generates some good ideas for you guys in terms of how you might be able to use color coding. Now we're going to make this a little more meaningful, because you can see, it's got all the American Business Futures stuff down, and then it starts the next company, and it gets kind of, it's kind of like got the same total all the way down until you switch the customer. So for starters, we're going to just introduce a couple buttons here. So this is the summary footer. So whereas we're looking at this big grid that we haven't grouped or anything, it's just a big list that we've added some fields to. If I click that, that'll open up the summary footer. And it just added some boxes down at the very bottom of all of these fields. And we can do things with these fields. So for example, if it's a numeric field like the balance here, if I go over that, or the current balance, let's see here, I'll move that over just for grins. I can do math with these things. So here, if I right click in that little box, I can make it a sum, a min, max, count, or average. So sum makes sense in this example. So I can see now that the balance of all the invoices that are open here, that are in this grid, is the $693,000 and change. Now, let's group this by some other way. So I think what would make sense here would be by the customer. So if I drag the customer up here, I'll do a couple things. If I drag it by the division, what that does is, if I shrink this up, in this particular instance of Sage, the customers are divided into two divisions, Division 1 and Division 2. So now what I've done is I've created a group. So I've got a group for Division 1, and I've got a group for Division 2, and then I have a total. So if I wanted to, if I scroll down here, here's let's see here, where's the bottom of Division 1? Here we go. So here's my group summary footer. So if I want to have a subtotal for my group, in this case by division, all I have to do is click that button. And now at the bottom of each division, I also have those same boxes that open up. So now I have Division 1 is for 548,000. And if I go back down here to Division 2 and expand that, I can now see that it has 145,000. Those two add up to the 693. So this is very similar to Crystal Reports in terms of grouping and how you handle the totals. You're not limited to one group, however. So if I wanted to group this by the division, this big gray box is your grouping kind of pane, and as you've seen, we just dragged it in there. If I want to also group now by the customer, I can drag that up there, and it'll create a subgroup. So now I have one for the division and one for each customer. I have those same totals underneath each customer. So now I can get a customer total, a division total, and a total from my entire grid. Okay. All right, we're going to change this back to another view. And I'm not going to save my setting yet. We'll talk about save settings a little bit later. All right, I'm going to go back to this customer view. And we're going to get into a little bit more of formulas and color coding here. So we already saw in the last example that we could bring over the current balance. So right here is that same current balance column. We also have in this particular stock customer view, it's also giving us the aging. So for those of you who've been using the AR module for a while, this is typically your 30, 60, 90, and 120, depending on your settings. And then here's what's current. So these things represent what's past due. So it might be nice if we had a formula that told us what was the total past due. So I'm going to go to my column settings, and we're going to do our first calculated field. So we're just going to click calculated here, and I'm going to give this expression, this formula, a name. So very simply, we're just going to call it past due amount. Now here I'm going to build my formula, or expression is the terminology that they use in BIE. So right over here, I'm going to go to my tables. I know that that aging information, aging 1, 2, 3, and 4 represents the past due balance. And I know that those live under the AR customer. So I'm just going to come over here, find the AR customer, and here's my available fields on the right. I'm just going to take the first aging category, double click it, add it to the top expression builder, click plus, click 2, click plus, click aging category 3, click plus, and add aging category 4. That should be the math for my past due amount. All right, what else are we going to do here? Well, this is a number, it's dollars, so we're going to set this to currency. And in this particular example, what we want to do is really draw some attention to something that has a past due amount. So we're going to use the column level formatter to open up the currency formatting. And if that number is a positive number, which is this format here, I'm going to want to display that number in red. So I'm going to right click in that positive format mask. I'm going to insert my color tag, and I'm going to choose red. And that's all I'm going to do. Now, it always adds these fields to the right side of the screen. That's just the way they designed it. So if I want to move that past due balance over here, where it might make sense is right there. Okay, right in front of my aging. Now let's say that, we also wanted to fix our aging categories to be more reflective of what we actually had set up, since that can change based on your install. So I'm just going to show you that fairly quickly. Aging category 1, I could simply just update the caption to be 30 days. And I could update the rest of them the same way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do another formula. So we have our past due calculated, we have our aging category showing here, we have a current balance. And what I want to do now is I want to have a total balance. So this is an example just to show you that you can use formulas within formulas. So I'm going to go back to my column settings, and I'm looking for a total balance. I don't have a field that does that, so I'm going to calculate one. So here we go. I click the calculated button. I type in my description here. Actually, I'd like it with a capital B. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to use our already calculated fields. So if I highlight the calculated fields here, I can see that there's the formula for the past due amount that I just did. So if I click that there, it just brings it right up to the top, and that's kind of gets me a head start. And in this case, I also need to add the current balance. So that field is under the AR customer. So we are going to add the current balance. And there's my current balance. Say OK. And now I have a total balance. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to format that as a currency, and we'll just leave it like that. Now there's my total balance. If I want to bring that over here, now I have a total balance, current balance, past due amounts, and my breakdown based on my aging. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and kind of save this at this point. So I'm going to do file save as, and I'm just going to call this, I'm going to use a date code like today's date. And public setting means that anybody else can use your setting, and they can change it. Private means that it's just for you. All right, so now when I click my drop down here, I have my standard plus any other settings that I might have saved, such as my 0228. All right, Boolean. We're going to talk about Boolean things here. So a Boolean formula is what we're going to do here. And Boolean kind of, you know, is kind of a weird thing. So there's some things you kind of got to know about it, and I'm going to try not to go down the rabbit hole too far here. But basically, Boolean means it's a something that you can apply a format to that will evaluate certain data as true or false. So it can work on string data, meaning it's non-numeric data, or it can also work on numeric data. So if it sees the number 1, 9, capital T or lowercase t, an uppercase y or a lowercase y, then it assumes that the value is true. If it finds the value 0, it assumes the value is false, or any number that is, not 0. So we can kind of use this Boolean type of logic to help us present some data in Sage. So for example, if we wanted a yes/no flag, something really obvious to indicate whether somebody was past due, if the red number wasn't good enough, we could possibly use a Boolean formula to do that. So we're going to enter another formula here, and it's going to be a Boolean formula. Or at least eventually we're going to add a Boolean so you can see the difference. All right, so we're going to go to column settings. We're going to make a calculated formula. All right. And then down here, calculated fields, we have past due amount. So we'll say OK. And if we format this as Boolean, and we use the column level formatter, it's going to evaluate the numbers in the past due column, and it's going to give it a yes/no. And over here, we can insert a color tag for this as well. So let's go ahead and do that for fun. And then if it's not past due, we'll put it in green. So if I bring this guy over here, now we can see that everybody that has a positive number there, past due, is displaying the word yes, they are past due in red. So it's kind of another way of working with the data. All right. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is a named value formula. So let's see here. So in Sage, so first thing we're going to do is just talk about kind of what Sage does and how this works. Common thing that Sage does. So column settings, what we're going to do with here is we're going to use the customer status field. So let's see if we have that here. Nope. So we're going to add the customer status field. There it is, customer status. All right, so, and I'm just going to leave that kind of there, just like it is for right now. And then I'm going to come over here and kind of show you what it does. And Sage makes extensive use out of this kind of a technique where there's a code in the database that represents something much more meaningful. So this is just one really basic example of this. So in Sage 100, and the A represents active for a customer, I are inactive customers, and T are temporary customers. Those are the three statuses you can have. Now, looking at this, depending on what you're looking at, that may be intuitive to you, or it may not be that intuitive to you. It might be more helpful if we actually put something behind that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a named value formula. So we're going to add customer status again. There it is. Okay, only this time we're going to do something different. This time we're going to format this as a named value. And then we're going to use the column level formatter to more or less tell it, what the values are. So bear with me here while I type this in. So box 1 means active. Oh, I mean inactive, excuse me. Then I'm going to add it. A will be our active, of course. I'm going to add it, and T is temporary. So, I can literally just think of example after example after example in Sage of where they use this type of logic in the database. It's everything from all over the inventory tables, all over the customers, all over the vendors. Really, this is a good feature to know what you're doing with here as far as how to turn that into more meaningful data. Now, if I scroll over here to the right, now I've taken the letter A and actually been able to make it display the word active. So that makes it a little more dynamic for the person who's looking at it, more meaningful. So that's what the named value does. We just take the value in the database and we provide a name for display purposes, basically. All right, functions and formulas. All right, so this is kind of a silly example, but just to show a function here. Rarely do I get asked this, but I do get asked it occasionally. So we're just going to do a function that calculates the length of the customer's name. For some reason, if we wanted to know that, how would we do that? All right, so we're going to add a column setting. It's going to be a calculated field, and we're just going to call it customer name length, just like that. Now, what I like to do, these functions can be a little bit trickier. So, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. But what I like to do is actually find the function that I want. And feel free, there's lots of functions in here. What I like to do is find the function that I want and insert it, and then add the data element that I'm trying to get the function to work with. So in this case, I'm going to use character length. Character length. There's a couple of them here. So watch out for that. You may have to kind of trial and error to see which one works best. So generally what you're looking for, once you have the function up above, you're looking to find out in this little part here that says string, that's where you want to replace the data element you're trying to get the function to work on. So over here, if I go over to the AR customer, there's customer name. What I'm going to do is just kind of highlight that. If I do it just right and double click the name, it'll insert the name in there. So if you do it just right, the brackets won't be overwritten. It should look something like that, where there's the function kind of squiggly brackets on the outside and the regular brackets around the field that you have. So I'm going to say OK there. And we're going to kind of see what we get. All right, we know it always adds it to the right, so we'll scroll over there and we'll bring this guy all the way over. Might have to do a little short stop here to get it all the way there. But there we are. And, I'm not going to count the characters, but it looks like that's working. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save that guy. And we're going to close this one. And we're going to open up the Open Invoices view. And this is one of the ones I kind of enjoy doing. So this is the stock grid, and we've got a number of invoices showing in the upper grid here. So each row represents an individual invoice. And we've already seen we could group it by customer, division. We could group it really by anything we want to. But in this case, what I want to do is I'm curious, in this example, we want to see what day of the year we actually invoiced. And we'd be able to do some real interesting analysis if we did some trending studies on what days of the year, periods of the year were actually our busiest periods. We all think we know that, but sometimes the hard data tells us something different. So what we're going to do, we're just going to do a formula here for day of year invoiced using using one of these functions. All right. Here's our expression builder. Here's our functions. So we're going to go look for something that might be able to calculate the day of the year. There's day of year right there. Notice there's some other, functions similar to that in that range. So there's my day of the year. Now the question is, well, what date do I want that to operate on? So I'm going to come over here to my tables, and the open invoice table should have my invoice dates. So I'm going to come down there and I'm going to try to find the invoice date. I'm going to highlight my field up above and go hunting. There's the invoice date right there. I'm going to double click it. It inserts my date into the function, and if I've done it correctly, the brackets are where they're supposed to be. And let's see here. Give this a name up the top. Hit OK, and let's see what that does for me. All right, so if I put this over here to the invoice date, it looks like it's working. It's saying that January 31st, 2020 is the 31st day of the year. And then I very easily could do some interesting graphing and studies based on, how many invoices were occurred on which days of the year. All right, another quick thing here. We already did some grouping by division and by customer on the last one. Once you have something grouped in this grouping pane up here that I just drag things in there, you can just remove whatever it is that you've grouped it by. You don't have to keep the grouped columns in your grid. So once you've grouped it, you can remove it if you wish. Okay, customer view. So we're going to, I'm just going to save this real quick. And I'll give it the same type of code. My only advice on saving settings is don't use funny characters, commas, slashes, question marks, weird stuff like that. Try to use standard alphanumeric characters. It'll keep you out of trouble. All right, so we said we were just going to go back to the customer view here. And I'm going to pull up that view that I had. So you can see I saved that as the 2/2018. We pull that guy up. There's everything I did before. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about filtering now. All right, so it's telling me to add the average days overdue here. So I guess that's in line with a collection scenario. So we're going to go to the customer. Okay, so there's the average days overdue. I'm going to move it over here. Okay, and there's my field. Now, filtering. So all of these columns have little drop downs, and these function just almost exactly like a data filter does in Excel, if you're familiar with that. So let's see here. If I do like balance, if I come over here and find their balance, total balance, if I say, for example, balance equals 0, I can pick the 0 there. It immediately filters the data, and it turns that little button, that little drop down arrow, blue. I know it's probably hard to see on the recording, but it is blue. Okay, so I can set that back to all. And then there's also a filter builder down here, so we can do a little bit more, combinations of filters together here. So we're going to do a filter here. We're going to say the average days overdue. Whoops. Go hunting for that. to the bottom. I was expecting it in the same order. Average days overdue and the past due amount is going to be, this is going to be greater than 45. You can also hit the drop down here to see actual data from your grid, or you can actually give it your own value, which is what I'm doing. And so average days overdue is more than 45, and then I'm going to change this to the past due amount is, in this case, I'm going to say it's greater than $2,000 is my, what I want to put. All right, and I can just keep adding criteria if I want. And sure enough, there is one of them in here that is more than 45 days past due and more than $2,000. So if I want to just turn that filter off, down here you can see that it's telling me that there's this filter here. It tells me what it is. I can uncheck it to unfilter it, just check it again to refilter it. I can also click the drop down here and see that I had a total balance equal to 0. So any other filter that I've had in a given data entry session is still available there, even if I've clicked the delete button on it. So that's something important to remember. As long as you're in a given data entry session, all the filters that you've built previously will still be there. If you don't save them with your setting and you exit, they'll be gone the next time you go in. So just keep that in mind. Okay, a little bit on sorting now. This will be very quick. So here's our total balance column. We had that filtered at one point. So if I set it to all, there's now no filter. The filter says it's empty. And what you can do is you can sort by any of these columns. So if I just double click past due amount, it sorts from lowest to highest, or I can sort it the other way. It's really hard to see, but next to the black data filter arrow, there's a little triangle, and right now it's pointing down. And if I click it the other way, it points up. It just tells you whether you're sorting in ascending or descending order. So I don't know if that's even visible on your guys' screen over there, but it's there, trust me. Okay. So we saw a little bit on summaries and group summaries earlier. Let's talk a little bit about exporting. Okay, so under the file, there are export options. So notice that there are several options. Excel seems to be the popular one. This works a lot better with the 32-bit version of Excel than it does the 64-bit stuff. So despite the fact that Microsoft is writing 64-bit versions of operating systems in Microsoft Office, the rest of the world hasn't really caught up yet. So sometimes it works better with 32-bit. You do have an option for selected records only. So the selected records are how? Well, you can click on these little boxes at the very left end, and that's how you can select records if you want to, select them for export or for some other reason. This setting up here, the export options, if I click on that and I go back, you'll see that that's checked now, which means it's only going to export the records I've picked. If I click it again and go back, that checkbox is now cleared, which means that when I export it, it's going to export everything that's in my grid. So the nice thing about Business Insights Explorer is because it's in a grid, it almost always exports very cleanly to Excel, because it's a grid interface. So if I want to take everything I have here and just hit Export to Excel, give it a minute here, it should launch my Excel and export this guy. Okay, and there's my Excel. And bad me, Microsoft is mad at me. I didn't license my copy of this on this VM. All right, so as you can see, all the data is nice and neat in Excel here, which those of you who have ever exported data from Crystal Reports, especially very customized and formatted ones, know that that's one of the big limitations is how to get stuff cleanly into Excel. All right, so this is a possible way around that, maybe. All right, so let's see here. Let's do something else real quick. Let's talk about grouping or charting a little bit. So let's say I wanted to group this by the salesperson. And then I wanted to open up these summary footers and group summary footers, now I could get a past due amount by each salesperson because I've grouped it by salesperson. So right now we're seeing Jenny Hernandez, her group. She has 7,000 past due. Here's poor Harvey. He's got twice as much or more than twice as much as her. And then there's some more salespeople toward the bottom. Grand total, everybody owes 37,000 past due. So if we want to, we can also chart this really easily in Business Insights Explorer. This is one of the things I think that it's really easy. So if we say, for example, let's do past due by rep, we can do different types of charts. So maybe we'll make it a pie chart. How many data points do you need? I don't know how many reps this data set has, but I'm just going to leave it as 8 for now. Here's the data series. What is it that we want to chart? So maybe we want the past due amount, and maybe we want to group that by the salesperson, let's say. So, and we could pick some more data elements, but this gives you the idea of how quickly and easily that was done. Right now, we can really, really clearly see that Jim is our problem, and actually, it looks like it's actually Harvey that probably is the problem. So definitely when you have half the pie as a sales rep with past due accounts, you're probably a sore thumb. All right, let's talk a little bit about printing. Okay, so we're gonna do we're just gonna do the print preview here. So here's the print preview that we're all used to seeing. So you can print your reports, and I'm gonna just do a couple things in here. So we're going to format the title here. And right now it just has the word customer. So we're going to call it something more meaningful. Past due action report. There is a properties tab, so you can mess around with the properties, change the font, do whatever you want to do here. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. It just gives me my title there. You can mess around with the features in here. They're pretty straightforward. But then if I wanted to, I could go ahead and save this and be able to print my report right from that menu there. Something that's worth mentioning here is that, and I don't have it currently calculated, but if I had these group summary footers with the subtotals in here and or a group footer or a summary footer at the bottom for a grand total, the reports actually keep those totals, those subtotals for you. If you export this to Excel, it does not keep those subtotals. So keep in mind that when you export to Excel directly versus printing a report, it does not keep your subtotals for you. So just fair warning on that. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and save this again. And then let's see here. How might you pull this all together? A couple other little things. So the secondary grid with this information down here, if what you want to see up above is the stuff down below, you can do what's called drill into preview, and it brings that same information right up above where you were. Now this becomes exportable to Excel as well. Use my back button to go back. So let's see here. This is the customer view. So what I'm going to do here now is just show you something that's a little bit more finished, kind of toward to finish up the webinar here. This is a collections dashboard. It uses many of the same things that we've already showed you in today's webinar. Just going to kind of pull it back in together here for you and show you how you might combine this with the navigation pane. So we'll do view navigation pane. We'll put the navigation pane back. So the navigation pane does a couple different things. It can change the preview. So right now we're looking at sales history by period, but we can change it to any of these other kind of categories to kind of change the information. So, if we're looking at that type of information, we see the open invoices down below. Depending on what we want to see, we just can change those radio buttons. So if I go into Explore, it can actually change my whole view that I'm in. So This isn't the way I usually like to navigate this, but you can do that. The part that I think is the best part of it is the tasks. So once I expose the tasks, these are things that I can do things in Sage 100 with, like enter cash receipts or go to customers. So hypothetical scenario, if this was my collections dashboard, and maybe this is not even grouped by the salesperson, but however you like to display it, I could locate this past due account. Notice they have a past due amount. I could go right from here. I could see the information. I could have that customer's phone number right here. I can see the collection notes. I can see when they were last called. I can see who the caller was, etc. For whatever information I have, and I could use that to call the customer and say, "Hey there, American Concrete Service. We've got this invoice that's past due." Get them on the phone. I could pop open. I could click the customer maintenance right from the tasks there. It opens up that customer. I could go right into their collections tab, make an update to my note, whatever I want to do, save the information. And perhaps while I had them on the phone, if we have the credit card module for Sage and have integrated credit card processing, I could very easily update my note and then also go directly in the cash receipts right here and process a credit card for him to collect the past due balance. And that's kind of how you can use the custom office, Business Insights Explorer, and the power of some third-party add-on or even say just standard credit card offering to kind of tie everything together with Business Insights Explorer. And that's pretty much what I had planned for today's webinar. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm going to open up the lines. Lines are now open. If you have any questions, please feel free to jump in. I checked the chat window. I'm not seeing any questions there, and I see no hand raises. Oh, I do see one from Lori. I'm sorry, I looked in the wrong place. Can I see UDF columns in sales order entry under Lines tab in any of the Explorer views? I didn't find it under the sales order view. Lori, are you still on? You are unmuted.
No problem. Let's go take a look. So the best place to find out, I don't know off the top of my head. My guess is yes, you probably can. But let's go over here. So here's the sales orders view. And I don't know if I have an example of this. I don't know if I have any UDFs in line items. So let me do this. So this looks like the line item information down below. So in order to be able to add a customization to the grid, it has to be in the upper grid. So I'm going to drill into preview here. And then I have no idea whether I have any UDFs in here or not. I probably don't because it's demo data, but let me find out. So here is the SO sales order detail. I do have a couple UDFs. You're in luck. So, and just by virtue, I was going to tell you it's probably doable, by virtue of the fact that we can see the table, and that's the key to the question is, can we actually see the table in this BIE that would have these hypothetical customizations? And in this case, the SO sales order detail, if it's there, it means that you should be able to see these customizations. So let me add length. I have no idea if there's anything in here. And we'll go ahead and add the other one since we don't know if there's any data in here and just see what we get. Okay, now, and I do not see it. Let's see here. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. So that may not be as doable as you think. So I kind of tricked it where I took line item information down below and I tried to put it up top, but that may not work for UDF. So maybe that doesn't work. Drill into preview. Yeah, I don't see it bringing it over, unfortunately. So it looked like it's doable, but I can't actually get it to display myself unless there's some other trick here that I'm missing. Let's try that one more time. That looked like it might be doable, but I think the drill into preview, it's not literally it's not a stock primary view, and maybe that's the limitation. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I did get it in there. I don't know, maybe something blipped the first time. So yes, it does look like it's doable, although mine looks like maybe it doesn't have any data in it. Any other questions? Any other questions out there?
I'm sorry, I was on mute and I was not aware. Lori said thank you for the information. And I want to thank you for your presentation today, Bruce, informative as always. Thank you for attending our Lunch and Learn webinar, and we will have one more on the 22nd for the New Sage 100 Manufacturing, and keep an eye out for the March ISM Lunch and Learn webinars, which will be circulated in our newsletter released on the 1st of March. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.